All right, hello everybody. This is Sunday, October 19, 2014. I'm Corey Stolzenbach, joined now by a very special guest. He played on both sides of town in Chicago for the White Sox and Cubs, all-star third baseman, also former head coach at BYU. I'm talking about Vance Law. Hello, Vance. Good evening. Good to talk to you.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. I hope everything's going good. Let's begin, Vance. What kind of things did your father teach you about the game growing up?
Well, it was more rather than just a sit-down teaching type of a setting. It was just the exposure of the game. And when I was young, I could go to the ballpark with him to Old Forbes Field in Pittsburgh, where he pitched for the Pirates for 16, 17 years. And as a young boy going to the ballpark, nearly every day at least I would ask him to take me every day. I could shag in the outfield and just be around players and be around the game. I learned an awful lot about the game just being around it. Later on, as I got older, he would teach me some of the things about the importance of moving runners and things like that as an offensive player, and that's one of the things that I think that I was ahead of some of the people, the kids that I played with that were my age. Through high school, I understood a little bit more about how the game is really supposed to be played.
And I understand he actually served you when you were head coach at BYU.
Yeah, he would. He came and would throw some batting practice once in a while, and he was always there to mentor some of the young players too. Yes.
So I know when I was trying to set up an interview with him, he said that he usually goes out golfing Wednesday mornings with some of his friends. Do you ever go golfing with him?
I don't go very often. They play. They hit and they walk. They don't play really according to the rules too much. They have gimmies from about 5 feet. They don't even have to putt them in. So I prefer playing a more competitive round of golf if I play golf. But no, earlier on, years ago, I played golf with him an awful lot. We used to go out and play, and particularly in the off season when I'd come home after the season was over. That's really the best golfing time here in Utah is the early fall. But I've been very fortunate to spend a lot of time with my dad. My dad was very instrumental in my career when I was playing, and he would throw me batting practice in the off season in preparation for spring training. And he was. I felt like I was one of those guys who was really blessed to be able to have a Cy Young Award winner throw me batting practice through the winter.
Yeah, that really is something, and good for you. You actually started the organization that your father spent his entire career with, and you were traded to the south side of Chicago, I believe just before the 1982 season. And one of the Hall of Fame inductees this year was Tony La Russa, who was one of your managers in your career. What were some of your initial impressions about him?
Well, the first time I met him was the day I was traded. I was traded at the end of spring training in 1982, and as people who follow baseball or followed my career know that I played the game with glasses on, and but I only wore glasses at the time during games. Off the field, my vision was still good enough that I didn't need to wear glasses 100% of the time. So when I was traded, I walked into the White Sox clubhouse. I didn't have glasses on, and past Tony's office and I asked the clubhouse attendant where the manager's office was, and he said it's right there to your side. So I went in there and just kind of knocked and poked my head in, and he just kind of looked up and said, "Yes, can I help you?" And I introduced myself. He says, "Oh, I didn't recognize you. You didn't have any glasses on." And the initial impression that I had was that I'm not sure he even knows who I am. But then he had me sit down and we talked, and what he told me was that we needed an extra infielder. Right now, you'll be going to Chicago with us with the Major League team unless you play your way off the team in the last 2 weeks of spring training. And so that impression was that here's a guy who will let you know where you stand. He'll be straightforward with you, and that's the way I found him to be. He was honest, communicated very well with his players. I think that's one of the best things among many that Tony did was communicate with players. Players knew where they stood. They knew that he wanted it done a certain way, and if you didn't do it that way, you'd hear about it. If you did, that's what was expected. And frankly, that's the way I like to be treated as a player. And now as a coach, back with the White Sox, I do the same. I try to do the same thing. I let players know where they stand and what they need to be able to do to compete and hopefully get to the major leagues.
Yeah, I understand that you were working in Arizona with them not too long ago. You were the starting third baseman for that team, the White Sox, which finished with the best record in Major League Baseball, 99-63. However, didn't always get up to the best start. You guys were 32-33 at one point, and for about the first 3 months of the season, you hovered at around 500 ball. What changed? What was the turning point in the season?
Well, you're referring to 1983, no doubt. The difference was, and this may be a subtle difference, but Tony moved Carlton Fisk to the number 2 slot in the order. And for some reason, right after he did that, our ball club took off. Obviously, there was other differences. A couple of pitchers who were just so-so at the start of the year really turned on and had great years. Lamar Hoyt being, he was solid completely the entire year, winning the Cy Young Award. But Richard Dotson, Britt Burns, Floyd Bannister. I mean, it was a solid pitching staff, and those guys got their acts together, and we played good defense behind them. We played sound, fundamental offensive baseball. People referred to us as a team that wins ugly, where we might score a run without even having a base hit during an inning. We might get a walk, stolen base, move a runner by hitting the ground ball to the right side, and the next guy hits a sacrifice fly, and we lead the game 1-0 early on. And those kinds of things happened an awful lot. When you get a team that believes in each other and will execute for each other and not be selfish and worry about their own stats, one thing that our hitting coach Charlie Loud told us was that if everybody will buy into that philosophy, everybody will have a good year and not just 1 or 2 or 3 players. And that team in 1983 bought into that, and we played very, very solid baseball after the end of May.
But they also fell to the Orioles in the ALCS, and they were outscored 19-3. Good pitching by Baltimore, or poor offense that could have been better on your behalf?
Well, one of those games, the score I think is a little aberration because they went off on one game, in game 3 or something. They hit back in Chicago. They scored 11 or 12 or 13 runs or something. So, it was one bad ball game that we didn't play very well. The other games were really close. Baltimore had an outstanding pitching staff, though, too. They had a very good starting rotation. Their bullpen was solid, led mostly by Tippy Martinez. Sammy Stewart's another guy that pitched really well for him. Tim Stoddard. So there was some real good arms on that ball club also, and we didn't catch a break. I still think that if we would have the best of 7 series instead of the best of 5, we would have been the ones going to the World Series because we had that unfortunate happening in Game 4 where I ended up getting ran off third base by a runner trying to go first to third, and we would have had bases loaded and just 1 out. We end up losing that game, by Tito Landrum hitting the home run in the 10th inning after Britt Burns pitched an unbelievable game. But those are the what-ifs and would-have, could-have, should-have, but it didn't turn out that way. I wish that it would have happened that way, but unfortunately it didn't.
Understood. And there was one big scandal in the middle 80s was the Pittsburgh drug trials. You started your career in Pittsburgh, and many of your former teammates were involved. At the time, when the story broke in 85, you were with the Expos, and Tim Raines was your teammate. He testified there. Before the story broke, Vance, how much, if any, knowledge did you have about what was going on in baseball surrounding cocaine?
Well, I'm a pretty naive guy. I was never one of those very religious person, and I was never one that really experimented with drugs or alcohol or tobacco, and as a result of the religion aspect. And so I was very naive. If that was going on when I was in Pittsburgh, I didn't know anything about it. And when it broke, I was shocked that some of my former teammates were heavily involved in that. Tim Raines, I know, was involved in that, and it's very well known about that. And when I became his teammate in Montreal, he and I became very close friends. And in fact, as he was trying to break that addiction, it really upset me when we go to other ballparks and have fans, start yelling, remarks regarding cocaine down at him. He was a leadoff hitter. I was batting second. I wanted to climb up in the stands sometimes and, just let these people know what a difficult thing it is for somebody to overcome addiction. And he was going through that at the time, trying to make sure that he stayed clean and I applaud him for being able to do so. And he ended up having, another 10 or 12 very good years in the major leagues. In fact, I think he should be one of those guys voted into the Hall of Fame. But he was one of my favorite teammates that I ever had, and so it was tough for me to see him have to go through some of those difficult times.
Well, I'm sure, I bet, but unfortunately heckling's a part of the game. How great was it for you to be an All-Star with the Cubs in 1988?
No, that was really kind of the crown on my average career, I guess, is to be able to make a Major League All-Star team. Particularly after some of the remarks that I'd heard from some of our scouts when I was with the Pirates, saying that I wouldn't be, I would be a utility player on a second division team. I would never really become a regular player, and I ended up proving those scouts and many others wrong, because I was able to play on a regular basis pretty much for 8 of the 10 years that I had in the major leagues, and play on some very good teams, as a matter of fact. And then to be able to be named to the National League All-Star team in 1988 was a real thrill. Be able to play with some of the guys that I had competed against for the number of years, and to be dressing in the same locker room as those guys, and be able to participate in the All-Star events was really a thrill for me.
Well, I'm sure it was. I'm sure it was, and you definitely had a lot of things going for you. You also pitched in relief a few times in your career. You played in Japan. You played on both sides of town in Chicago. Speaking of which, who would win a World Series between the '83 White Sox and the '89 Cubs?
That's tough to say, and I love my experience playing on both sides of town. I think just because of the depth of the White Sox pitching staff in '83 versus the depth of our pitching staff on '89, we had a lot of young pitchers on that team. But I would say the experience factor that we had on the '83 White Sox, I thought that was probably a little stronger team. Offensively, we had, we were pretty good offensively through the course of that season also. And that's not to say that we weren't pretty good on the '89 Cubs too. We had some very, very good players with Andre Dawson and Ryan Sandberg, both Hall of Famers, and we had the Rookie of the Year that year, and Jerome Walton, Dwight Smith had a great year, Sean Dunston. That was a very solid team also. But there was a couple of Hall of Famers on that White Sox team as well. Carlton Fisk being the one, and to me, I think Harold Baines should be in the Hall of Fame as well. That was a very solid offensive team too. But I think just because of the depth and the experience of our pitching staff on the '83 White Sox, that was probably maybe a stronger team than the '89 Cubs. But both of them, it's kind of tough to compare because they were both very, very good teams.
And you're talking about Hall of Famers. Don't forget about Greg Maddux, who was on that '89 Cubs team as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, Mad Dog, I'll tell you what, he was one tough competitor. I didn't like facing him when I was with the Expos, and he was only a first or second year player, and so I had the thrill to be able to play with him later on. And he's a guy that you look at this happy-go-lucky demeanor, school teacher type looking, to see him go out on the mound and compete. I mean, he'll knock somebody down in a heartbeat if it needs to be. And but boy, what a tremendous competitor! I love playing with Greg too.
Just a few more questions and then we'll go. Do you believe in the Billy Goat curse?
No, I'm not. I'm not superstitious that way. The Cubs, the north side of town, has had a real tough. They've had a tough time, and for many years, I don't think they could really compete playing all the day games. I think they're closer now. Boy, they're getting a lot of good young players coming up now. I certainly hope the best for them, that they have a chance to get back to the World Series again, and hopefully these guys will buy in. And the ownership, they're working hard to get a kind of club that will be able to compete on a season by season level each and every year.
Just two more that I've got. When you were a head coach at BYU, there was an article not too long ago that came out when Don Mattingly was saying that he thinks that Clayton Kershaw should be the MVP of the National League, and that was something that he never thought about should happen when he was a player. So when you were head coach at BYU, what were some things that you learned or you saw that you didn't notice when you were playing in the big leagues?
Oh, boy. I think you take into account more the off the field conversations you have with players. As a player, I didn't realize how much work was involved in trying to make sure that your players were on the same page as you were, as far as buying into what you want to do, your philosophy on how to play the game. On that subject of whether a pitcher should be, I mean, there's great arguments on both sides. I think there's no doubt that a guy has an impact like Kershaw, that he could certainly win the MVP as well. But then you think he only impacts 30 to 35 starts a year versus that guy that's out there, that plays 162 or maybe 150 if you're pretty much a catcher that's catching every day. Those guys certainly have I think, even a larger impact. But if you win you have the winning percentage and the kind of outings that keep your ball club in a game, 35 times a year, that certainly warrants its consideration also. But those little things like that, I think communication with players, I didn't really realize how important that was until I became a head coach, and now, as I say, a coach in the minor league system with the White Sox.
Last question before we go. Giants or Royals, and why?
Oh, boy, now you're putting me on the spot. I'm hoping the Royals. I'm back in the American League. I guess that's one of the reasons. Another reason is that it's been a while since they've been there, not since '85, and almost 30 years, and it would be, I think, be a great thing for them to be able to win it again. And I love their pitching staff. I know the Giants have a solid pitching staff too, but boy, when you face those relievers coming out of the bullpen in the 7th, 8th, and 9th innings, I mean, that's pretty tough to handle. Of course, you got to have a lead in order to be able to do that, and somehow these guys have been able to scratch out runs enough for them to get leads. And I'm not sure that sitting out for a week waiting for the World Series to start has helped or benefited either one of these teams. And I think it's become a little bit more even, in as much as the Giants were able to win in 5 versus having to going 7, I think I would have given the Giants the edge there because they would have been sharper because they didn't have a layoff like the Royals are going to have right now. But both teams having layoffs, I think it's just a matter of who comes out and pitches as well as they can. And I like the bullpen out of the Royals. That's the reason I choose them.
Vance Law, you've been a tremendous guest. I want to thank you so very much for your time. I hope that you enjoy yourself. I'll be sure to send you a copy of this and to your father as well. I know that was a little more than 15 minutes, about a little more than 20 actually, but I do thank you for answering all my questions with grace and stride and everything. And you take care, and thank you all to our listeners for listening as well. All right, Vance, have a great night, sir. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.